Hi. Thanks for the movie. I guess I would be interested in starting with the very end. If you're up for talking about it, about the puppet running at the end of the movie. And I thought the accuracy of it was uncanny and so funny and beautiful, and it also made me feel really sad. For me, it was actually one of the most emotional moments in the movie, and I was trying to think about why. And I mean, for one, I'm so familiar with this running scene in Mauvais Song, and it's been copied a lot and paid homage to, and people just play it a lot in like tribute to movie montages, so it's kind of become a piece of movie mythology. Like it's almost become kind of a cultural cliche now, not the original material, but how movie culture has digested that scene almost 30 years later, and it feels like you're kind of acknowledging that and embracing it, and sort of how the scene has entered the mainstream and become familiar in some way. And I was so curious at what point in the process of making this that reenactment with Annette came to you, and if you always knew it would be at the end of the movie. And it also just made me think of your body of work and all the reenactment and repetition that has happened over the years, whether it's like a puppet playing a baby or Denis Lavon holy motor switching from role to role, or in this film, the replaying of footage from your own movies. So that's a really long question, but it's this idea of reenactment that I kept thinking about watching it.
So this film started. It's a museum in Paris who asked for an exhibit and a short self-portrait, like 10 minutes self-portrait. And I started to work on this, something like a self-portrait. For the first time, editing myself with images I had or images I would take with my iPhone or whatever. And then I left the exhibit, so I didn't do that. But I liked the process of. I'm insomniac, so at night I would have images, and in the morning I could edit something and record my voice on my iPhone. So I liked the process. So I went on, and for the exhibit we had thought. I missed Annette. I mean, I hadn't seen her for 2 years or something, and I like the puppeteers. We see them here.
Where were they keeping Annette?
Well, I have one at home.
How many are there?
I don't know. There were like 5 different ages, from 0 to 5 years old. I have this one. Adam has one. I saw. I mean, there are a few there. But, and also I thought, so for the exhibit, I thought of doing with the puppeteers a little atelier with kids where they would be able to manipulate baby Annette and to learn how to puppeteer. And since that didn't happen, and I still wanted to work with Annette, and I thought since the film, I don't know if it's about anything, but it's about these two worlds, 20th century, 21st century. I wanted to put them together. You know, this song was in one of my first films, and Annette is my last film, and I wanted these two worlds to meet in a way. So that's how it happened.
What you were just saying about the 20th into the 21st century made me think about both the gaze of the gods and also that beautiful section about blinking. And I was curious about the switch in your body of work from shooting on film to shooting digitally, and what that felt like and the ups and downs of that. I mean, it's funny, I almost, thinking about Holy Motors, I feel like one of the most incredible things about it is just like how unbelievably digital it feels in a way that I think is really successful, and like kind of scary, and I'm in a really good way. And I was just curious about this and how much you were thinking about celluloid and shooting digitally while you were putting this together.
It's you get attached, you know. You get attached. I started being interested in films and making films at the same time, and that was 20th century, and that was film, and I was very attached to that. But two things. I mean, I made my three first films with the same director of photography, Jean-Luc Godard, who became my brother, my big brother, my friend, my best friend, I guess. And then we split after my third film, and he came here. He came to America. He died here. And when he died, I thought I'll never work on film again, and because it was very specific to my work with him. So first I felt, you know, I don't like to be nostalgic. I'd rather be furious. So I decided, I don't have a choice. I'm going to go to this terrible place. But it's interesting. I mean, that's what cinema is. Cinema is the only art form that needed an invention. It needs, you know, a motor, a holy motor, or it needs. You can't do it without people and without machines. So you have to. Every generation has to reinvent it, and with whatever machines exist. Also, I decided when I went to digital to stop watching what they call dailies, you know, watching. When I made films on film, I would watch dailies and I would want to remake everything. So my shooting was getting longer and longer. And without watching dailies, I'm able to shoot faster and cheaper.
Are all of the movies you shot with, I'm going to pronounce her name badly, Caroline Champetier, are all of them digital? Have you shot with her on film?
No, I only shot on film with Jean-Luc Godard.
Shot it. And what was your collaboration like with her on this film? When did she become involved? And I'm sure it was completely different than with your other movies. I'm curious what that collaboration looked like on this.
Well, on this film, it's a short film, and there's not many scenes I had to shoot. They either come from other people or from my stuff, or etc. But basically, it was the same people I work with now. You know, from Annette, Caroline, and same. Except I edited it alone, but the same people. Set designer Florian, the same people. Yeah. Yeah, I need people. I always needed people. I have to find people. Yeah.
I am hesitant to talk about Godard too much because I feel like that's probably what you have had to talk about a lot in all the Q&As for this movie. But I really do think it's interesting how he's kind of like a bad father figure, good father figure in this movie. And I was thinking too about his exhibition at the Pompidou that never happened too, right? He had one that never happened and then one that did happen. And I was curious if you saw that one. I assume you did, and how you felt about it, and how much his exhibition that didn't happen is part of this movie. And also, if it doesn't feel too repetitive, I'd be curious to hear about the first Godard movie you ever saw as a young filmmaker, and yeah, and what it felt like.
When I arrived in Paris and I started watching films and I started understanding there's got to be someone behind the film. Whereas younger, I saw films for action and for actors. So I would see mostly silent films or old films, American, Russian, French. But that's when I discovered Godard. At the same time, his first films, the New Wave films, and the films he was doing then in the 70s, which were not films, which were video, experimental or political or both. So it was very powerful to think there's one guy alive, because the filmmakers I discovered were mostly dead. He was the one alive and living not that far, who was working still. And I remember I was, as a young boy, when I opened the newspaper every morning, I would be afraid to find out he died. So anyway, years later, he died. But, and he died, of course, while I was doing this film, which is kind of haunted by that story. And also because he's probably one of the most important artists who tells that story, how we went from 20th century to 21st century.
When did you find your voice, like the voiceover in this movie, which feels kind of like a son imitating his father a little bit? I was curious when you found it and how you found it, and if it's manipulated or if it's you just doing the voice.
The voice is the morning voice after insomnia with my iPhone, basically. Yeah, it's hard. There have been great, we all have, I'm not Orson Welles, or I love voices. When I arrived in Paris, I collected voices. I collected voices from writers, poets. I still have a huge collection of these voices.
Like just with a tape recorder?
No, you could, in France at least, you have LPs, or, with Céline, or poets, Paul Éluard, or Aragon, or many writers recorded their voices. I love voices, so yeah.
I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about Monsieur Merde, who, when I first saw Holy Motors, felt just more like id unleashed, but actually in watching this movie, he actually felt more man-made or like a puppet. And I was wondering, kind of what your journey with him has been and what he meant to you 10 or 15 years ago and what he means to you now, and why you wanted to put him in this film too. This is the third film you've put him in.
Well, I think he saved me. I started young, but I made only 4, maybe 5, films, and I couldn't make films. I wasn't not able to make films, and that's what I was telling about before about going to digital. And before I did Holy Motors, I did a little film in Japan with this character, Monsieur Merde. It was like 40 minutes, and I'm proud of it because it's the only time everything went fast. Usually between the moment you get an idea and the moment you finish the editing, in my case, sometimes it's been 10 years. This time it took, a year and a half maybe, because it was cheap also. But not only that, it all went. And I hadn't worked with this actor, Denis Lavant, who you see in this film often, for 20 years, I don't know how many years. So it's really a co-creation with Denis. So I invented the language and, and a character, but I invented it for him. That's what, when I said we have to meet people. If I hadn't met Denis when we were 20 or 22, I would never have made these films. I don't know if I would have made any films, but not these films, because I don't like casting. I don't know what it is, so I have to imagine something for someone. And so that's what happened with Denis. And I wanted to, you say in English, grotesque, the grotesque? Yeah. I felt I needed something grotesque. Monster, something from the origins. Like cinema started with la foire, and we say in French, and with the monsters and all these tricks, and even Chaplin, and all these characters who were monstrous in a way, but fun to watch. And I felt I wanted to work with that.
Yeah, he feels like a corpse, but he also feels like a broken machine to me. In such a
Well, that's Denis. He really comes from circus, street theater, mime. He doesn't like cinema. He didn't want to do cinema at all. He was happy with theater and circus. Yeah.
Do you think you'll make more films with him? Yeah.
You never know if you're going to make more films at all. With neighbors in Paris, I bump into him sometimes. I don't know.
Another section in this movie that I find so moving is the pas lui part with the photographs that are not and are of you and your father, and the pas la. And yeah, it just makes me think of like continually trying to find truth through the wrong gesture or the wrong image. And I was curious at what point in your process of making this film that kind of became important to you, using the wrong photograph or the wrong man. Like, not this, not that.
Yeah, it's a big question. Bad fathers. I'm a father now. I don't know what to say about that. It's hard not to be a bad father, that's for sure. And the fact is, I changed my name when I was 13, longer before I knew I would make films. So obviously I didn't want a father. And I think we shouldn't have fathers, but that's a personal opinion.
I think we shouldn't have mothers, so we're fucked. Yeah.
Well, we can't do anything about that.
No. I think we should open it up to how they just told me. Wait, I had one more question, which is, or maybe it's not a question, but one of my favorite lines is, well, this maybe relates to mothers, is you're in the egg when you say that near the beginning of the movie. And I was wondering where that line came from or when it came to you.
I never know. I never know these things. I always forget. I don't know. Yeah, it's like a bad omelet. I mean, the story, about you can't make an omelet without breaking eggs or whatever. Yeah, I'm a bad omelet. That's how I feel. Yeah.
Thank you. All right, we can open it up to you guys now. I think they're going to pass a mic around. Do you want to pick who's going to ask you a question, or do you want me to pick? You want me to pick? Okay. How about in the front? That's easy. And they're going to bring you a mic.
Thank you. Hello. Wondering if you can talk about your love for David Bowie and his music and your films, and why that really speaks to you?
Well, first of all, I wanted a life in music. I think we should all have a life in music. There's nothing better. I mean, you know, either singing, composing, playing an instrument. So I couldn't have that because I was bad at it. But and then I went into cinema because cinema is the place you don't need to have any gift. You don't need. Filmmakers don't know how to do anything. You know, they can't even I can't hold the camera. I can't record sound. I can't do anything. But you can feel like you're doing it all if you meet the right people. And it's true that with cinema, I have the feeling I'm a musician. So the question was Bowie. So there's a whole huge gratitude if a voice accompanies you all your life. There are not that many voices that have been there almost all your life. You know, for me, I've listened to Bowie since I'm, 10 years old, or Nina Simone, or a few singers. And their voices are there all my life. So this, I guess this gratitude that I tried to express here.
Hello, my name is Victoire. So we are in New York, so it makes sense that New York appears, but I was curious, like, why you put New York in the film? And also, like, do you have some thoughts about, like, filming women today in general?
The question is about the Madison Square Garden Nazi rally footage in New York and then the women filmed section?
No, it's not. It's just about the fact that there is between New York, well, like there is no other city, and it makes sense because we are in New York now. But when you see it in Paris, it's like, why would there be New York? And then in general, like about filming women, like in 2024, 5, 6, 7.
So why New York?
Why New York?
I'm half American, and I've been coming here. And I was born like 15 years after the war, the second World War. And all they talked about on TV, when I could watch TV, there was one channel, black and white. It was the camps, torture, being a collaborator or resistant, as we call them in French, you know. So that was like, as in the film, it was like, I thought it was maybe a bad fairy tale invented by parents to scare kids, you know. There once was a guy called Hitler, blah, blah, blah. And so that's my childhood in terms of fantasies or bad dreams. And one day I saw these images that, this guy is well known, this Jewish young guy who was a plumber, or I forgot what he was. Who, he's there in New York and Manhattan with all these Nazis, and he goes on stage and gets. So I thought this is amazing that this happened in America, and I thought it was interesting to see it today. That's it.
As I was watching, I had my eyes kind of primed for parallels in both of your work. And one thing that came to mind is you both touch on constipation and shit. I'm thinking of your play Infinite Life and the flick. And I'm wondering if, this isn't really a fully formed question, but if you guys could talk about that a little bit. And are either of you inspired by the first chapter of Ulysses or James Joyce's work in general?
So it's a question about constipation and shit.
Yeah.
My favorite subject. And then there was Ulysses by Joyce.
Sorry?
He talked about Ulysses by Joyce.
Ulysses by Joyce, the first chapter, yeah.
Oh. I never read it because it's like Moby Dick. I never read it because my English is not good enough, I feel. And I wouldn't want to read them in French. But I read all Melville, but not Moby Dick, I'm afraid. But I think, I don't know, because people, we have been asked, what is it about this and that? And I always feel this film is about I don't know what, every film. I wish they are masters in cinema, some Hitchcock or Robert Bresson, they know exactly what they're doing. I wish I was a master, I'm not. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm in kind of chaos and I'm interested in exploring that chaos and something happens or not with the film. And I don't know where I'm going. The question was, yeah. But yeah, sometimes I see like this project, it doesn't have a story, but maybe it's like a tale, like once upon a time, this is how childish men were, or once upon a time, this is what destroyed us and this is what kept us alive. And the film has a lot, it says or tries to say a few things about men as children, or the immaturity, you say that? Immaturity of men, which seems a big problem. Myself included, of course. So the shit aspect is to talk about this regression. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have anything smart to say about shit, but a friend did point out to me that there's like people talk about shit in like every single one of my plays and in my movies. So I guess I don't know. That's important. We don't talk about it enough. Yeah, maybe one more. Yeah, you. Yes, you.
So there's that moment where you kind of mentioned the gaze of the gods, and now the gaze is more like a boy watching a girl from afar. And I was kind of wondering if you could kind of talk about how how that kind of came to mind, like what in camera movement or in the field of view is kind of missing today, or how that's evolved to that point, and how that came into your mind, because that particularly struck me.
I also thought of the moment in Holy Motors when Denis Lavant says, like, the cameras used to be bigger than us, and now they're smaller than our heads. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the biggest camera I had was on my first short film when I was 18, a Mitchell. And after that, it went smaller and smaller. Through the 80s, I made 3 films on film. Each time the camera was smaller. And of course, when I went to digital, again, smaller and smaller. And there's something, I'm interested in heaviness and lightness, let's say. The unbearable heaviness of being, and how heavy we are. The French writer Céline, when he was asked, what would your last words be before you die? And he said, ils étaient lourds les hommes, which is how men were heavy. And I've always felt that in my films when I was young. I always try to film people trying to escape gravity through love, or through running, through dancing, through something. But there is a relation between, like the film we showed in this little film, this passage, it's a Murnau film, Sunset. The cameras were so heavy and so hard to move. There's that, that in French, inertie, I don't know in English. That made me think this character is followed by something huge and heavy, which is not, of course, the same as it says. If I film my daughter today with my iPhone, so each generation has to reinvent this power of cinema, of primitive cinema. We have to find it again and again through however we can, and whatever the cameras are. Or tomorrow there won't be any more cameras for sure, but we still need to reinvent the glaze, the regard. And it's like ecology, if you have too much shit, too much pollution, blah blah blah, you have to fight. If you have too many images, you have to fight. That's the Japanese filmmaker Ozu said, you have to wash your eyes between two regards. How do you say regard? Glaze. When you look at something, you have to wash your eyes before you look at something else. And today it's impossible. It's becoming impossible to wash your eyes or to clean your eyes. I'm not sure I'm answering the question. But.
Thank you so much.
Merci. Thank you.